Here's a surprising tidbit to kick things off. Canada, that country often just associated with maple syrup and maybe being super polite.
Uh-huh.
Well, it actually boasts the ninth largest economy globally. Bigger than California's population-wise, which is kind of wild.
It really is. And it's interesting how its economic clout sometimes flies under the radar.
Exactly.
But when you actually dig into the numbers, the trade, the sectors, it's clearly a major player. A fascinating story there.
Totally. And that's what this deep dive is really about, giving you a clear look at what makes Canada's economy tick.
Right.
So whether you're an entrepreneur looking abroad, maybe a student in economics, or honestly just curious about global success stories, we're aiming to unpack it all.
It's about that often balanced strategy they seem to use, mixing natural advantages with policy, trade, innovation, even inclusion.
We'll look at the history, the resources, the policies, the whole picture, how it all weaves together.
Okay, so where do we start?
Yeah.
Way back.
Let's wind the clock way, way back. 17th century, the fur trade, that's really where Canada's economic story kicks off.
Yeah, and it's amazing how European demand, specifically for beaver pelts, kind of ignited that first economic engine.
It wasn't just trapping, though, was it?
No, not at all. It was complex. It absolutely relied on indigenous knowledge, navigating these vast territories. It was really early international commerce.
And we have to stress the role of indigenous peoples here. They weren't passive bystanders. They were guides, suppliers, crucial trading partners. Absolutely central.
Right, and think about the legacy. The Hudson's Bay Company, founded 1670, still a name today.
Incredible longevity.
It shows how that trade spurred exploration, shaped where settlements popped up, and kind of laid the groundwork for what came next.
Which was largely agriculture, right, as more European settlers arrived.
Exactly. Farming became the next cornerstone. Think wheat, grains, the prairies turning into this bread basket for the world.
Yeah, you hear that phrase a lot. It really cemented Canada as a major food producer early on.
Then you roll into the 19th century and things start to industrialize. Manufacturing, mining, transportation.
And you can't talk 19th century Canada without mentioning the railway, the Canadian Pacific. That was monumental.
Oh, absolutely. A game changer. Symbolically, it stitched the country together, this huge landmass.
But practically, too, right? For moving goods.
Practically, it unlocked everything, opened up markets, made trade possible on a scale they hadn't seen before. Really vital.
Okay, so fast forward a bit. Early 20th century, Canada becomes this key supplier of raw materials. Then, boom, the World Wars.
And that period really forced a massive shift. Canada had to rapidly gear up its industries for the war effort both times.
Becoming the arsenal of democracy, as they called it.
Exactly. And that wartime production really expanded its industrial base significantly, left a lasting mark.
Then comes the post-war boom, the 50s, 60s. Rapid growth, rising middle class, new industries starting to emerge.
And, importantly, alongside that growth, you see major investments in things like hydroelectric power, especially in Quebec and BC, building energy independence.
Plus, the social side. That's when they really invested heavily in public health care, education, the social safety net.
Yeah, that combination of economic growth and social progress became quite characteristic of Canada, didn't it?
Definitely. Now, oil. Mid-20th century, Alberta strikes black gold. Another massive turning point.
By the 70s, oil and natural gas were absolute pillars of the economy.
And those oil sands.
Yeah.
Just enormous reserves.
Immense. One of the largest proven reserves in the world. So huge wealth generation, but also, volatility tied to global oil prices and increasingly environmental questions.
Right. Then the 80s and 90s bring globalization into sharp focus. Trade deals.
Yeah, the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement in '89, then NAFTA in '94. These really deepened the economic ties, especially with the U.S.
Huge opportunities for Canadian businesses, I imagine, but also more exposure when the global economy hiccups.
Exactly that trade-off. Access to the massive U.S. market, but less insulation from global downturns.
Speaking of downturns, 2008, the global financial crisis, a real stress test.
In Canada. Oh, it stood out, didn't it? Its financial sector weathered that storm incredibly well.
Remarkably well. No big bank bailouts like in the US or Europe. Why was that?
Well, it really boils down to pretty conservative banking regulations, strict oversight from OSFI, that's their regulator,
So things like requiring banks to hold more capital.
high capital reserves, yeah, plus more cautious mortgage lending, bigger down payments needed, income verification, not much of that subprime stuff.
Interesting. So a culture of being less risky.
A culture of risk aversion, definitely. And a more concentrated industry, the big five banks, which arguably made oversight a bit easier too. It boosted Canada's reputation for financial prudence.
Okay, which brings us closer to today. The economy keeps evolving. Now we're seeing the shift towards technology, innovation, services.
Absolutely. Cities like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, even Calgary are becoming real global hubs for business and tech.
Growth in AI, clean energy, film, you name it.
It shows that adaptation again, moving towards a more diversified, knowledge-based economy, not just relying on resources.
And immigration plays a huge role here too, right? That points-based system.
Critically important, immigration is a core economic strategy, bringing in skilled talent. And alongside that, the ongoing vital work towards economic inclusion for Indigenous communities. That's essential.
So it's quite a journey, from fur trapping to AI research hubs. A story of adapting, leveraging strengths, and, well, resilience.
That sums it up pretty well. Resilience is a key theme.
Okay, let's dig into one of those foundational strengths, natural resources. Canada's just blessed with them, isn't it?
Immensely so. Second largest country, land-wise. The sheer scale and variety of its resource wealth is staggering. It's been the bedrock for so long.
Let's start with the big one, oil and gas. Still a huge part of the picture.
Oh yeah, world's fourth largest oil producer, third largest proven reserves, mostly thanks to those Alberta oil sands.
The Athabasca oil sands, the scale is hard to grasp. 140,000 square kilometers.
It's massive, over 160 billion recoverable barrels estimated. Huge GDP contributor, tons of jobs, massive impact on trade, especially with the U.S.
But, as we mentioned, it comes with major controversies. Environmental impact, climate change concerns, indigenous rights.
Absolutely. It's a complex balancing act. And don't forget, natural gas, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan are big producers too. Plus those big LNG projects like in Kitimat aiming for markets in Asia.
Trying to diversify who they sell to.
Exactly. Reducing reliance on just the U.S. market. But the whole energy sector faces this massive transition challenge.
Okay, beyond energy, minerals and metals. Canada's a mining giant.
A global leader. They mine something like 60 different minerals and metals. Nickel, copper, gold, uranium, diamonds. You name it.
The Canadian Shield, that ancient rock formation, is incredibly rich.
It really is. Canada's a top 5 producer for many critical minerals. Potash from Saskatchewan, for example, is vital for global agriculture fertilizers.
And there's growing interest in things like rare earth elements too, right? For batteries and electronics.
Definitely. That's becoming increasingly strategic.
Then there's forestry, those vast forests, 9% of the world's total.
Yeah, about 347 million hectares. BC, Quebec, Ontario are the big players for lumber, pulp, paper.
But it's not just about cutting trees anymore, is it? The approach has changed.
Significantly. Much more focus now on sustainable forestry practices, reforestation, and importantly, growing partnerships with Indigenous communities who often bring deep knowledge and take leadership roles in managing forests sustainably.
That's a positive shift. Now, something we might overlook. Fresh water. Canada has an incredible amount.
About 20% of the world's total freshwater resources. It's a staggering figure. Supports hydropower, farming, cities, everything.
And hydropower is dominant, isn't it?
Hugely dominant. Nearly 60% of Canada's electricity comes from hydro. It's the world's second largest hydro producer.
Wow. That gives them a massive clean energy advantage, one of the cleanest electricity grids among major economies.
It really does. A huge asset in the push for decarbonization.
So all these resources, energy, minerals, forests, water, they're not just commodities. They have real strategic importance globally.
Absolutely. They make Canada a reliable supplier of critical materials, food, energy. That gives it weight in diplomacy, trade, even global security. A stabilizing force in some ways.
But the big question is that transition, right? Moving from purely extraction towards more sustainable practices, green innovation.
That's the core challenge and opportunity. Investing in clean tech, carbon capture, supporting indigenous-led resource governance, balancing that economic strength with environmental responsibility.
Okay, so resources are clearly fundamental. Let's pivot to something less tangible but just as crucial: Canada's banking system. It has this reputation for being incredibly solid.
It really does. Consistently ranked among the safest globally, known for prudence, stability.
And that reputation was cemented during the 2008 crisis, wasn't it? We touched on it.
Absolutely. While major banks elsewhere were collapsing or needing massive bailouts, Canadian banks stayed profitable, stable, no taxpayer bailouts needed.
So remind us again, what were the key reasons? Strict rules.
Yeah, a combination. Strict regulations from OSFI, their supervisor. High capital requirements, basically forcing banks to keep a bigger cushion against losses.
And conservative mortgages.
Conservative mortgage standards, yes. Requiring decent down payments, verifying income properly, very little of the subprime lending that caused so much trouble elsewhere.
And the structure. Fewer big banks.
The big five dominate, yeah. That concentration, plus a general culture of risk aversion and long-term thinking within the banks themselves, all played a part.
Did this get noticed internationally?
Oh, definitely. Canada's finance minister at the time got a lot of praise. Banking execs were asked, how did you do it? It really boosted public trust, too.
And the long-term effects, does that stability actually help the economy grow?
Yes, significantly. It attracts international investors seeking a safe haven, especially during uncertain times. That can strengthen the Canadian dollar.
And for people within Canada?
It supports consumer confidence. People feel more secure, which helps spending, borrowing for homes or businesses, investment. The banks play a vital role, funding entrepreneurship, education, innovation.
So it's an active contributor, not just a safety net. Have they kept things tight since 2008?
They haven't rested on their laurels, no. They've introduced more measures, stricter stress tests for banks, tighter mortgage rules at times to manage consumer debt, ongoing vigilance.
So it's really a strategic asset then, this stability, this trust, it's foundational.
Absolutely. In a volatile world, that kind of financial resilience is a major advantage. It's part of this interconnected ecosystem that works pretty well.
Okay, from internal stability to external connections, let's talk trade and exports. Canada's hugely reliant on trade, isn't it?
Oh, massively. Exports are absolutely vital. Billions of dollars in goods crossing borders every single day. Rail, ports, trucks, planes. It's a constant flow.
What are the big ticket items heading out? Energy must be near the top.
Right at the top. Oil and gas, especially crude petroleum. Huge revenues, mostly going south to the U.S. Alberta's the engine there.
Then vehicles, cars, parts, that whole corridor in southern Ontario.
Yeah, the auto sector is huge. And it's incredibly integrated with the U.S. supply chain. Parts cross the border multiple times before a car is finished.
Fascinating. What else? Machinery.
Machinery and equipment, definitely. Industrial stuff, precision instruments, aerospace components, too. Quebec's a big aerospace hub. Bombardier, Pratt & Whitney.
Right. And those traditional resource exports are still key. Lumber, paper.
Still very significant. Canada is the world's largest exporter of softwood lumber. BC, Quebec, Ontario leading the way with that increasing focus on sustainability we mentioned.
And agriculture. We talked about the breadbasket, wheat, canola.
Canola, soybeans, lentils, the prairies feeding the world. Canada is the biggest canola oil exporter globally. Huge demand.
Even seafood. Lobster, crab, salmon.
Yeah, big exports, especially from the Atlantic provinces in BC. High demand in Asia and the U.S. for Canadian seafood.
And it's not just goods anymore, right? Services are growing.
Increasingly. Financial services, education, lots of international students, software, tourism, becoming a bigger piece of the export pie.
So who are they trading with most? The U.S. is #1 by a mile, right?
By a long shot. Something like 75% of Canada's exports go to the United States. The economies are just deeply, deeply intertwined. The USMCA agreement governs that now.
Who's #2? China.
China's second largest. They buy a lot of agricultural goods, minerals, lumber, seafood. It's a significant, though sometimes complex, relationship.
And Europe.
The EU is important, especially since the CETA trade agreement came into force, giving preferential access for many goods and services.
And that Pacific trade deal, the CPTPP.
Right. That opens up more lanes to fast-growing Asia-Pacific economies. Diversification is key.
All this needs infrastructure. Ports like Vancouver, Montreal, the rail lines.
Crucial. Vancouver's the gateway to Asia, Montreal to Europe.
Mm.
CN and CP rail networks are the arteries. Airports, trucking. It's a massive logistics operation.
And the government helps companies export.
Yeah, Export Development Canada, EDC, plays a big role in helping businesses, especially smaller ones, find and succeed in new markets.
So trade really underpins a huge amount of Canadian jobs and income.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When you see those export numbers, you're really seeing jobs created and communities supported across the country.
But it's not always smooth sailing, is it? Supply chain issues, trade disputes.
No, there are always challenges. Supply chains have been messy lately, trade spats flare up, environmental concerns, shifts in global demand. It requires constant adaptation.
But looking ahead, trade seems likely to remain a core strength.
You'd have to think so. The resources, the skilled workforce, the geography, the reputation for quality, the potential is definitely there.
Okay, let's zoom in on that dominant relationship. U.S.-Canada trade, it's more than just numbers, isn't it? It feels unique.
It really is one of the most significant and, frankly, enduring trade partnerships on the planet. Shared supply chains, integrated industries. People cross the border daily for work.
Built over decades, right? Geography, history, necessity, and those big trade deals. NAFTA really formalized it.
NAFTA in '94 was a landmark. Created the largest free trade zone at the time, took down most tariffs, led to unprecedented integration.
And now USMCA, or CUSMA as Canada calls it. What changed?
It kept a lot of NAFTA but updated things for the modern economy. Stronger rules on labor, new rules for cars to encourage North American production, digital trade provisions.
So mostly tweaks and modernization.
Largely, yes. It maintained that crucial preferential access to the U.S. market for Canada, which is absolutely vital. Some new areas like intellectual property, small business support, dairy access was a sticking point.
And the human side is huge, too. You said billions in trade daily.
Over $2 billion a day in goods and services, and something like 400,000 people crossing that border daily for business, work, school, tourism. Border cities often feel like twin economies.
Energy is another massive link. Canada supplying the U.S. with oil, gas, electricity.
Canada is the largest foreign energy supplier to the U.S. Pipelines like Keystone, Line 3, interconnected electricity grids like Quebec hydro feeding New England. It adds security and affordability for both.
And it goes beyond energy, finance, telecom.
Deep integration across many sectors. Finance, aviation, agriculture. Huge amounts of cross-border investment flows both ways. Even shared emergency services in border regions.
But it's not always perfect harmony. We hear about trade disputes, lumber, steel, dairy.
Yeah, tensions do flare up. Softwood lumber is a classic example. Sometimes Buy American policies cause friction.
But they usually get resolved.
Generally, yes. The agreements have dispute resolution mechanisms. The overall relationship is usually strong enough to weather these specific storms.
Even COVID, with the border closures, didn't stop essential trade, did it?
No, both governments worked hard to keep essential goods flowing. It actually kind of reinforced the mutual reliance and cooperation in a way.
So looking forward, it's about adapting together to climate change, shifting supply chains, new technologies.
Exactly. Adapting to those big global shifts.
Yeah.
Expanding cooperation in areas like clean tech, electric vehicles, AI, digital services.
It really feels like a cornerstone partnership. Their success is kind of linked.
Absolutely. It underpins North American prosperity. The core principle is still mutual benefit through openness and collaboration.
Okay, let's shift from established industries to the cutting edge. Canada's becoming quite the innovation nation, especially in tech.
Yes, there's been a really significant push. Technology and innovation are definitely seen as pillars for the future economy. It's becoming a dynamic hub.
And it feels deliberate, right? Government investment, focus on education, attracting talent.
Very much a deliberate strategy. Public investment, strong universities, targeted immigration for tech skills, creating these innovation districts in cities.
And they're making a mark in specific fields: AI, clean tech.
Leading in several key areas. Artificial intelligence is a big one, especially in Toronto and Montreal. Clean tech is growing fast. Biotechnology, too.
Toronto's AI seen the Vector Institute, Geoffrey Hinton's legacy, attracting big names like Google and Meta.
Yeah, Toronto's a global center for AI research and development.
Yeah.
A real concentration of talent and investment there.
And Montreal, also strong in AI, but gaming too.
Montreal's another powerhouse.
Mm-hmm.
The Mila Institute for AI is world-renowned, plus a huge gaming industry cluster. Ubisoft, Warner Bros., Games, EA.
And Vancouver out west. Software, green tech.
Vancouver's leveraging its Pacific Gateway role. Strong in software, booming green tech sector, visual effects for film, fintech, health tech. Big tech companies like Amazon and Microsoft keep expanding there too. A lot of startup activity.
So that's the innovation triangle: Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver.
Those are the big three, yes. But you've got thriving ecosystems elsewhere too. Ottawa, Calgary, Kitchener-Waterloo, Halifax.
Kitchener-Waterloo, Silicon Valley North. Shopify started there, right? University of Waterloo is huge for tech talent.
Exactly. Companies like OpenText, D2L2. Waterloo pumps out incredible engineering and computer science grads.
And their support infrastructure, incubators, funding.
Lots of it. Incubators like Mars in Toronto, accelerators like Communitech in Waterloo, growing the venture capital investment. Plus, government programs supporting R&D and innovation.
And immigration helps fuel this, that global talent stream.
Crucial. It fast-tracks visas for highly skilled tech workers from around the world. It's a key competitive advantage.
Plus strong universities feeding the pipeline domestically.
Top universities for STEM fields, absolutely. U of T, McGill, UBC, Waterloo, world-class institutions.
And we're seeing real Canadian companies emerge in advanced areas. Quantum computing, biotech.
Definitely. D-Wave in quantum computing. Epsilera in biotech, which was huge during the pandemic. Cybersecurity, space tech with companies like MDA.
FinTech too, disrupting banking.
Yeah, companies like Wealthsimple, Coho, Borrowell are changing how Canadians manage money. A very active space.
So Canadian tech isn't just promising, it's producing real global players, unicorns, IPOs.
We've seen quite a few successes. Shopify is the giant example, but also Lightspeed, Coveo, Clairco. It's a maturing ecosystem.
It really sounds like a potent mix. Brainpower, infrastructure, supportive policy, and a vision for the future.
That's the goal. Building the conditions for tech to thrive, ideally with an eye towards inclusivity and sustainability too. Canada's definitely carving out a bigger role in the global digital economy.
And that pipeline of talent, fueled significantly by immigration, seems absolutely central to this progress.
Couldn't agree more. Immigration isn't just a social policy in Canada, it's a fundamental economic strategy, a real cornerstone.
And the numbers are high, right? A large percentage of the population is foreign-born.
Remarkably high, around 25% or so. And it's guided by that points-based system we mentioned, actively selecting people with skills Canada needs.
The express entry system helps match people to labor shortages.
Exactly. It's designed to be responsive to the needs of the economy, filling essential roles across all kinds of industries, from healthcare and construction to tech and trades.
And immigrants are more likely to start businesses, too.
Significantly more likely, yes. They bring new ideas, connections, and a drive that fuels entrepreneurship and innovation across the country.
International students, too, studying there and then staying on.
A huge and vital talent pipeline. Many transition to permanent residency after graduation, contributing their skills long-term. Policies are designed to encourage that.
And diversity itself is seen as a strength.
Absolutely. Over 200 ethnic origins reported, more than 100 languages spoken. The multiculturalism, especially visible in cities like Toronto, brings diverse perspectives, fosters creativity, and builds global connections. It's an economic asset.
It sounds like a model focused more on integration than just assimilation.
That's the aim, helping newcomers integrate into the economy and society while retaining their cultural identities.
Are there challenges? Getting foreign credentials recognized?
Yes, that remains a persistent challenge.
Yeah.
Underemployment immigrants working in jobs below their skill level is an issue Canada is actively working to address through various programs and initiatives. It's not perfect.
And efforts to spread immigrants beyond the big cities.
Yet various regional pilot programs try to attract newcomers to smaller communities and provinces facing specific labor needs or demographic challenges.
It gives Canada a bit of an edge globally, this reputation.
Definitely. The perception of having humane, organized, and forward-thinking immigration policies is a significant soft power asset and helps attract global talent.
And it fits into that broader talent picture, investing in education for everyone.
It's all connected. Investing in domestic education and training, focusing on STEM, promoting lifelong learning, and bringing in global talent creates this dynamic ecosystem.
It really comes back to that idea, investing in people is investing in prosperity.
Precisely. It builds resilience, accelerates innovation, and drives productivity when inclusion is part of the strategy.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. A sector that leverages Canada's natural beauty and cultural appeal.
Tourism. It's a big economic driver, isn't it?
It really is, often underestimated, maybe. But tourism supports a huge number of jobs, particularly in small businesses, generates significant tax revenue, and showcases Canadian culture to the world. Tens of millions of international visitors every year, spending money on hotels, restaurants, attractions.
Injecting billions into the economy across a wide range of sectors, it's got a broad impact.
And the destinations are iconic. Banff in the Rockies.
A global icon, absolutely. Those mountains, the turquoise lakes, year-round appeal, a massive local economic engine.
Niagara Falls, obviously, a natural wonder attracting millions.
Huge numbers visit Niagara. Plus the whole infrastructure around it, hotels, casinos, the nearby wine region.
Big cities, too. Toronto.
Toronto's a major hub. Arts, culture, food, sports, the CN Tower, museums, big festivals like TIFF. Very diverse attractions.
Vancouver, that mix of city and wilderness.
Exactly. Stanley Park right downtown, Granville Island, Whistler nearby. Plus it's a major cruise ship port, gateway to the Pacific.
And Quebec, that European flavor.
Montreal and Quebec City offer that unique historical and cultural experience. Old Quebec's a UNESCO site. Huge festivals like the Jazz Fest, just for laughs.
And Indigenous tourism is growing too, offering cultural experiences.
Yes, that's becoming increasingly important. Offers authentic cultural experiences, supports Indigenous entrepreneurs, and contributes to reconciliation efforts.
Plus all the adventure stuff, kayaking, skiing, dog sledding.
Canada's wilderness offers endless opportunities for adventure tourism, from heli skiing in BC to polar bear viewing in Churchill.
So the economic impact is genuinely massive.
Pre-COVID, it was around $105 billion in total activity, supporting over 1.8 million jobs. It took a huge hit, of course, but it's rebounding strongly now.
Pent-up demand. Canada's good reputation helps.
Definitely. That brand image, safe, friendly, welcoming, clean, is a major asset. Plus, the sheer diversity of experiences means there's something for almost everyone. It really does support communities, large and small.
Okay, from tourism to another key provider, agriculture. We touched on it, but Canada really is an agricultural powerhouse, feeding itself and much of the world.
It truly is a major global producer and exporter. Very diverse crops, livestock, dairy, seafood.
Let's focus on a few key exports. Wheat is huge, right?
Absolutely massive. One of the world's top exporters, millions of tons annually. Those prairie provinces, the breadbasket, are famous for high-quality hard red spring wheat, great for baking.
Who buys it?
Big markets include the U.S., Mexico, Japan, China. It brings in billions in export revenue and supports jobs right across the supply chain.
Then canola. You said that was a Canadian invention.
A Canadian success story developed by researchers here to have low levels of erucic acid. Canada dominates the global canola oil market, over 40% share.
Grown mainly on the prairies, too.
Yes, ideal conditions there. It's used everywhere. Cooking oil, animal feed, even biofuels. Global demand keeps growing, another multi-billion-dollar export driver.
And we can't talk Canadian agriculture without mentioning
Maple syrup.
the ultimate symbol. Canada produces most of the world's supply.
Yeah, Quebec is the undisputed capital, producing maybe 70–80% of the global total. It's an ancient tradition, tapping sap, boiling it down.
Still economically significant.
Oh, yes. Hundreds of millions in revenue annually. The U.S. is the biggest customer, but it's popular globally now. Vital for small towns in Quebec and parts of Ontario. Plus, the tourism aspect, sugar shacks, festivals.
So Canada plays this crucial role supplying key food staples globally.
Absolutely. Wheat, canola, pulses like lentils. Very important. Plus livestock, dairy, seafood, fruits, vegetables. List goes on.
Strong trade relationships are key here too, I assume.
Very much so. With the U.S., EU, Asia,
Yeah.
processed foods are also a big export category. Cereals, snacks, beverages.
And sustainability is becoming more important in farming too.
Increasingly, farmers are adopting more eco-friendly practices, precision agriculture to use inputs more efficiently, crop rotation, soil conservation.
And it employs a lot of people.
Over 2 million Canadians work in the broader agriculture and agri-food sector. It's a massive employer.
Okay, shifting from food production to energy production, but with a focus on the future, clean energy and sustainability. Canada seems keen to be a leader here.
There's definitely a strong push in that direction, aiming for that net zero emissions target.
And hydropower gives them a huge head start, as we noted.
Almost 60% of their electricity is already clean hydro, world's second largest producer. BC, Manitoba, Quebec, especially Hydro-Quebec, are giants in this space. Reliable, baseload, clean power.
And potential to expand it further?
Some potential, yes, but they're also rapidly growing other renewables.
Like wind power.
Wind power has grown significantly, particularly in provinces like Ontario, Alberta, and Saskatchewan. Solar is expanding too, especially after initiatives like Ontario's Green Energy Act helped kickstart the market. Bioenergy from farm and forest waste is also part of the mix.
And policies are driving this, carbon pricing.
Carbon pricing is a key federal policy tool designed to create incentives to reduce emissions across the economy. Plus, that commitment to net zero by 2050, ambitious climate action plans at federal and provincial levels.
Lots of investment in clean tech R&D, energy efficiency.
Yes, significant investments are being made, trying to align with the Paris Agreement goals and position Canada as a leader in the global transition.
But there are big challenges, right? Transitioning that massive oil and gas sector.
That's the elephant in the room, particularly for Alberta. Reconciling the economic importance of the oil sands with climate goals is incredibly complex.
Dependence on fossil fuels is still high.
It is. So the challenge is managing that transition fairly, supporting workers and communities, while aggressively scaling up the clean alternatives.
What about the opportunities? Does this shift create new industries?
Huge opportunities. Innovation in clean tech is a major potential growth area. Canadian companies are already active in areas like carbon capture and storage, smart grids, battery technology.
Electric vehicles. Is Canada pushing those?
Big push for electric mobility. Goals for EV sales, investing in charging infrastructure, trying to build a domestic EV supply chain too, from minerals to manufacturing.
So the green energy sector itself could be a source of future jobs and growth.
That's the expectation. New businesses, new skills needed. Sustainable farming practices also fit into this broader picture.
And Canada can export this expertise, collaborate internationally.
Definitely. Exporting Canadian clean tech, working with other countries on climate solutions, it's seen as both an environmental necessity and an economic opportunity.
Okay, so despite these strengths and future potential, Canada, like most places, is facing some pretty significant economic challenges right now.
Yes, absolutely. No economy is without its headwinds. Inflation, the housing crisis, that dependence on oil we discussed, and the crucial need for real Indigenous economic inclusion are major ones.
Inflation's been biting hard everywhere. How's it hitting Canada?
It's definitely impacting the cost of living significantly, driven by those global factors, supply chains, post-pandemic effects, energy prices, but it really erodes purchasing power, especially for people on fixed incomes.
And the Bank of Canada is raising interest rates to fight it.
Yes, which makes borrowing more expensive for mortgages, loans. dampen spending. And being reliant on imports for many goods makes Canada vulnerable to global price shocks, too.
And the real estate situation, it sounds dire in some cities.
It's a full-blown crisis in places like Toronto and Vancouver, increasingly Montreal, too. Prices are just astronomical, locking young people and families out of homeownership, pushing rents sky high.
What's driving that? Low interest rates for years, not enough houses being built.
A mix of factors. Low rates fueled demand, supply hasn't kept pace, significant investment and speculation in the market. It creates real affordability challenges and potential risks for economic stability if there's a major price correction.
Governments are trying things, but it's a tough nut to crack.
Very tough. Building more affordable housing, trying measures to cool the market, but it's complex.
Then the oil dependence, we keep coming back to it.
Because it's still so central, especially for Alberta's economy and government revenues. But the global shift to renewables, climate commitments, it puts the long-term future of the oil sands under immense pressure.
Environmental concerns, price volatility, it's a risky bet long term.
Increasingly so. The need to diversify the economy, invest heavily in clean energy alternatives, and retrain workers in the fossil fuel sector is becoming more and more urgent.
And finally, Indigenous economic inclusion. Still a major gap.
A critical issue. Despite growing recognition and some progress, significant systemic barriers remain: access to capital, education, employment, resolving land claims, and resource rights.
But there's huge potential there too, right, for Indigenous communities and the whole country.
Immense potential. True economic partnership and reconciliation could unlock significant growth and create a more equitable economy. More work is definitely needed.
So challenges are real. But looking further out, what are the exciting future trends that could shape Canada's economy?
Well, despite the headwinds, there are definitely some very promising trends. Clean technology is one we've talked about.
You're really positioning Canada to be a leader in that low-carbon future?
That's the ambition. Leveraging strengths in renewables, investing in emissions reduction tech, energy efficiency, creating new industries and jobs, potentially exporting that technology globally. Alberta is even trying to pivot towards being a clean energy innovation hub, focusing on things like carbon capture.
Artificial intelligence is another huge one, right? Canada's already strong there.
Yeah, AI is set to transform everything, and Canada is genuinely at the forefront of research and development in many areas, those hubs in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver.
How could AI impact the economy?
Think autonomous vehicles, smarter healthcare diagnostics, more efficient manufacturing, personalized finance. The potential is vast. Of course, there are challenges too: ethics, privacy, job displacement that need careful management.
Global partnerships seem key too in this interconnected world.
Absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Maintaining strong relationships, especially with the U.S. under USMCA, but also diversifying trade in collaboration with the EU, Asia, other emerging markets, essential for resilience.
And lastly, that youthful energy, the young, diverse population driving innovation.
Definitely a major asset. They're feeding into that thriving startup ecosystem we see in the cities, bringing new ideas in tech, science, entrepreneurship.
Government support helps there too, funding incubators.
Yes, fostering that culture of innovation through education, funding, and making it easier for young entrepreneurs to get started is crucial for future competitiveness.
So to wrap this all up, it's quite a picture. A foundation of resources, solid banks, strong global trade links.
Layered with this rapidly growing tech sector, a real push on sustainability and AI.
It's clearly a diverse and, as you said, resilient economy. We've hit on the challenges too: inflation, housing, the oil transition, Indigenous inclusion, all very real.
And those future trends, clean tech, AI, global connections, youth and innovation, offer pathways forward.
So turning it over to you listening, what part of Canada's economy stood out or maybe surprised you the most? Was it the quiet strength of the banks, the sheer scale of the resources, the rise of the tech scene, the clean energy push, or maybe the critical importance of Indigenous economic inclusion?
We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below.
Yeah, let us know. And if you found this deep dive valuable, please give it a like, share it, and definitely subscribe so you don't miss future explorations.
And tell us what else you'd like us to dive into. Other economies, different global issues. We're always looking for suggestions.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for tuning in today. We really hope this gave you some useful insights into the forces shaping our northern neighbors' economy.
Keep learning, keep exploring.